Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 2018 Orange County Economic Summit hosted by our mayor, Orange County Mayor, Teresa Jacobs. Now, when a lot of you all got out of your car this morning, you had that nice little cold rush of air that hit your face, and you had your tongue frozen to the top of your mouth, you may have wondered for just a minute, am I at the convention center in Orange County, Florida, or is it the convention center in Orange Township, Minnesota? Well, rest assured, you're in Orange County, Florida, and I say this for two reasons. It's a little bit colder this morning in Orange Township, Minnesota, and with a population of only 324 citizens, Orange Township, Minnesota, does not have a convention center quite like this one. It's actually, I understand, it's Earl's Gas and Go, which also doubles as the town hall and the local wedding chapel. But we are so fortunate to be here this morning at this beautiful facility. Mayor Jacobs and her team have put together a power-packed agenda with some of the best professionals, researchers, and practitioners when it comes to giving us an insight into the economic realities of today here in Central Florida, but also a glimpse into the crystal ball about what lies ahead of us here in Central Florida when it comes to those factors that will drive our economic prosperity. Now, to properly begin our program this morning, I would ask you to please stand, place your hands over your heart, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please take your seats. We are very lucky to have with us this morning a large number of our local officials that have joined us today, and I want to recognize each of them. As I read your names, please stand, remain standing, and after I've run through all the names, we're going to show you our collective appreciation for your service. First, Commissioner Betsy Vanderlei, Orange County Commissioner, District 1. Commissioner Brian Nelson, Orange County Commission, District 2. Commissioner Pete Clark, Orange County Commission, District 3. Commissioner Jennifer Thompson, Orange County Commissioner, District 4. From Orange County Commission, District 6, Commissioner Victoria Siplin. Our Orange County Comptroller, Phil Diamond. Our Orange County Tax Collector, Mr. Scott Randolph. Our Orange County Sheriff, Sheriff Jerry Dimmings. The Mayor of the town of Windermere, Gary Brune. Mayor from the town of Oakland, Kathy Stark. John Dallas, who's President of the City of Edgewood. Joining us from the Orange County Public Schools, School Board Member Linda Colbert. And also her colleague, Christine Moore, also from Orange County Public Schools. From the Office of U.S. Senator Marco Rubio, Sarah Davila. And representing the Office of the Clerk of Courts, Andrea Otero. And finally, we are honored to have with us Roman Inokoski, who is the Honorary Consul from the Czech Republic. And if I missed any of our other elected officials, will you please stand as well? And for the rest of us here in attendance this morning, Mayor Kilsheimer from Apopka, thanks for joining us, Mayor. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking these folks for the service that they give to our communities every day. As I mentioned, there's a wonderful team from the mayor's staff in Orange County that put together this program every year. But behind that team, there's another team that is indispensable. And that is our group of sponsors today who make the program possible. I want to make sure that you take for just a moment and cast your eyes upon the screen. Look at our group of sponsors headed by our host sponsor, our good friends at Florida Hospital. And please join me in thanking all of our sponsors for their generosity and support this morning. And now I am truly humbled to have the honor of introducing our incredibly hardworking mayor. And when I say incredibly hardworking, that is the genuine truth. Sometimes we need to remind ourselves that Orange County is a strong mayor form of government. And as such, it is very unique in the United States and state of Florida. As a strong mayor, the responsibilities that falls upon Mayor Jacobs' shoulders are tremendous. She's the CEO of this county. She has oversight and leadership of nearly 7,500 employees. She's responsible for a budget of $4.1 billion. That's $4.1 billion. To put that in perspective, that's the equivalent of the state budgets for, respectively, Delaware and South Dakota. That's the Orange County budget, $4.1 billion. Every single day, she's looking after the well-being of 1.3 million residents here in Orange County. And keep in mind, every year we have 68 million visitors come through Central Florida. On a weekly basis, that's another 1.3 million temporary residents that are in our midst every year, and she's responsible, each week, she's responsible for those folks as well. That stewardship of the $4.1 billion goes beyond those responsibilities. She is overseeing allocations for the Orange County Public Library System, the Orange County Sheriff's Office, the other constitutional officers, one of the nation's largest jails. I think it's the second largest, or among the largest in the United States, one of the largest public utilities in the country, the second largest convention center, and the best convention center in the country. Also, she's responsible for maintaining the safety net of services for the less fortunate in our community, including homeless services, public health care, domestic violence, etc. The myriad of responsibilities that fall upon her shoulder are very complex. And if you're the mayor of Orange County, you have to have a certain set of leadership skills, political skills, maturity, financial markets, insurance markets, bond markets, and consumer trends. That complexity can be daunting, especially when we consider that every single day the mayor, the commissioners having to worry about how do you take changing federal and state regulations and all of the mandates that come down and fit that or somehow cram it into the local framework. And trust me, I know from personal experience, if local mayors don't get that right, those federal and state resource dollars and programs are at risk of evaporating very quickly. The work that the mayor and the Orange County Commissioners are doing right now is Herculean. They are taking on the task of putting together an historic backbone of infrastructure improvements and investments here in Orange County that will serve our residents, our families, our children, and our businesses for years to come. Thus, it is great pleasure that I have the honor of bringing to the stage the woman who keeps one eye firmly on the realities of the present, but the other eye is looking at the horizon for the challenges that lay ahead of us. Please join me in welcoming our mayor, Teresa Jacobs.
Wow, Fred, that was the best introduction I've ever gotten. Normally my mom watches all of the State of the County addresses on the internet live if she's not here in town. And I got to tell you, if I'd have known I was going to get an introduction like that, I would have made sure my mom tuned in. So I'm going to be sending her a link to this because a little sidebar. We took my mom to Alaska about a year and a half ago with the family and if you haven't been to Alaska, what an incredible place that is. So we took my mom and the family to Alaska, and we happened to meet a lady who had been the mayor of a small town, and her husband was so proud of her, and her husband was telling my mom about what her role was and what a cool lady she was and all this responsibility she had. She had like almost 700 employees working for her. And my mom was totally impressed. And she told the mayor from this small town, she goes, my daughter is the mayor too, and of Orlando, or no, it's Orange County, I think. Anyway, she's the mayor, and I think she's got almost that many employees working for her. And so she told me the story that night over dinner, and I said, okay, so Mom, it is definitely Orange County, Florida. That does include Orlando. And the 700 employees is 7,500 employees. And she was like, oh, my gosh. And so every time I do something stupid, which is, I have to admit, at home all too frequent, my mom is the one who keeps me in check and always says, and so you're the mayor of Orange County? So, Fred, thank you. This one is going to my mom. Folks, I am so excited to welcome you to this year's Economic Summit, my last Economic Summit. Since our first summit in 2011, we've seen tremendous change, and so much of it has been incredibly positive, from the steady growth in our high-tech and digital sectors to the continued relocation of headquarter companies, as well as professional service units. We remain among the top regions in the nation for job growth. And while there are many ways to measure success, including cultural and social diversity, environmental, health, quality of life, sustainability, and others, in the end, job growth is really one of the key measures upon which so many other successes are built. And when it comes to job growth, the numbers here in Orange County tell a tremendous story. Since 2010, the county's unemployment rate has dropped from over 11% to 3.1% in October of 2017. Of course, I did understand the numbers just came out yesterday, I think, for November. They're up just a wee bit. So I'll let you share that news. I'm going to stick on the positive. No, I think we're at 3.4% right now, but that's still incredibly low, and I think by most people's standards, that's virtual no unemployment. As a result, and for the second year in a row, Central Florida ranks the #1 in the nation for job growth among regions our size. And yeah. And Forbes ranked Orlando as one of the nation's best metropolitan areas to buy a house. Although, frankly, if you've tried to buy a house, you know that there aren't enough of them these days, and the prices are rising dramatically. But we're also ranked 3rd for best jobs and one of the top 10 metropolitan areas in America where people are moving right now, which is probably the reason that housing prices are going up. Orange County's permitting numbers reflect the same healthy momentum, with more than 3,600 new permits issued last year. While the private sector's recovery has been absolutely impressive, the story that the indicators don't tell is the challenges that have been faced by local governments like Orange County throughout the last 10 years. As some of you may remember, and all of us in local government remember all too well, in a series of property tax reform measures implemented just before the recession, Florida's legislature rolled back and capped our property taxes. That is, for counties, by far the largest source of revenues that we have. Ultimately, Orange County's property taxes fell by almost a quarter, by 24.8%, from the time of those rollbacks and cuts and the recession. And it was just last year, just 2017, when we finally returned to pre-recession levels. Now, in the midst of that time, we've also seen enormous growth in our population and growth in our needs. So I'm really pleased to point out and to share with you that in spite of the obstacles that Orange County, through our fiscal discipline and our strategic restructuring, we came through these challenges without cutting services and without raising our countywide millage. And we've continued to make strategic investments in our infrastructure, in our economy, investments that are paying off and paying off big. For instance, last year we celebrated major economic development announcements, including the expansion of Lockheed Martin's missile and fire control, which will bring 500 new high-wage jobs to Orange County, along with $200 million in capital investment. And KPMG's new 55-acre state-of-the-art National Training Center represents a $430 million capital investment here in Orange County and 80 new high-wage jobs with an additional 250 third-party contract positions. These globally recognized companies, along with others like Amazon, are contributing to our region's job growth and robust economy, as well as our reputation. These economic achievements represent hard work, but it has not happened in a vacuum. So many of these accolades wouldn't be possible without your leadership and your advocacy. And that's why I wanted to thank you for being here, but thank you for all that you do. It's also the commitment of our regional business partners, our community leaders, our educators. We have many of them here in the room, our elected officials and citizens from throughout the region. When we view what's happening in the aggregate, and I mean everything that's happening here in Central Florida, from an exploding economy to massive investments in our infrastructure, transportation infrastructure in particular, including the addition of a south terminal at the Orlando International Airport, it's both inspiring and energizing to see how we are outpacing nearly every other region in the country. This morning, we're going to hear from so many distinguished experts, including one of our absolute favorites in this community and a jewel that we have here in Central Florida, and that's Dr. Sean Snaith, as well as Tim Giuliani, who for some of you, you may be meeting him for the first time. He's the president and the CEO of our newly formed Orlando Economic Partnership. And we have some expert panelists that are joining us. All of them are going to be sharing variations of a singular message, that by working together, we're creating a business infrastructure and economic climate that supports job creation, a flourishing creative class, and a trained workforce. We're creating opportunities for all of Orange County's residents. I'm deeply grateful to everyone who continues to make our economic summits possible, including our incredibly valuable sponsors, especially our host sponsor, Florida Hospital. Please join me again in thanking all of our sponsors, and especially Florida Hospital. Okay, so I know we're all anxious to get started. I'm going to close with this. There's nobody in this country that tackles challenges as well as we do right here in Central Florida. Nobody does it with more collaboration and with more passion and enthusiasm. It's thanks to our culture of partnership and commitment to regionalism that we are making such enormous strides as a community. Thanks again for joining us this morning and for the wonderful work that you do day in and day out to make this the best place in the world to live, work, and raise a family. And Fred, I'm going to turn it back over to you so we can now begin our 2018 Economic Summit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Jacobs. There are stories, there are good stories, and then there are great stories. And those numbers and metrics that Mayor Jacobs shared with us this morning are phenomenal by any measurement. Jobs, household income, housing starts, financial solvency of the county. The future is looking good. But to continue our role here on establishing that foundation upon which our economic well-being is determined, we have the pleasure of bringing to the stage Dr. Sean Snaith. Now, how many of you all have heard Sean Snaith before? Been in the audience. Okay. Then you know what a special time this is for us. And the rest of you are in for a treat this morning. And for those of us that heard Sean before, well, it's like going back to the dessert buffet again because he is that good. He is our director of UCF's Center for Economic Competitiveness here at UCF. He is quoted extensively across the nation. You'll see him on Fox Business News, CNBC. He's been quoted in the Wall Street Journal. He's been quoted in Newsweek and USA Today, almost every publication that has to do with business. In fact, our news and marketing folks are looking very carefully. We think there's only 2 publications we have not gotten him into. We're working very hard on that, and that is Ranger Rick and Guns and Ammo. And hopefully we'll have those pretty soon knocked off on the list. Now, as Sean is presenting this morning, I want to remind you that for Sean and the other panelists, you can start loading up your questions right now on Twitter. Put in hashtag OCSummit18. Hashtag OCSummit18. For those of you that are dinosaurs like me, I still say # OC Summit 18. Put those in now. We'll be reading those off at the end of Sean's presentation as well as after Tim Giuliani's panel. And for those of you that might be technological dinosaurs, don't worry. We're going old school. You can still raise your hand, and we'll have a couple microphones that'll be circulating as well. But it is my pleasure now to introduce one of the nation's top economic researchers, teachers, and forecasters. I call him Florida's economist, and he's a treasure across the nation. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Sean Snaith.
Should have my mom come too, I guess. I mean, as far as the dessert, I'm sort of like green Jell-O with shredded carrots in it. I mean, to be honest, and at UCF, I'm more of a cubic zirconium than a crown jewel, but I'll take that. It still sparkles. Thank you very much for coming out today. It's always my pleasure to present at the Orange County Economic Summit. Thank you, Mayor Jacobs, for inviting me and inviting me back, which doesn't happen all that often in my life. So I'm always appreciative of that. Alaska is the one state I haven't been to, and I am looking forward to visiting it. I've watched quite a few of those shows based in Alaska on the Discovery Channel, and it looks pretty good. But I do like to get out west and do some fly fishing, which is one of my favorite pastimes. And I recently had a chance to go to Missoula, Montana, which is the location. I don't know if you've seen the movie. It's a bit dated now, but a river runs through it. Brad Pitt was in it. It's based on a novella, which is an excellent and short read. But, so I got to fish the Blackfoot River. I'm here. And so I set up a guide, and I went down to the fly shop, and I was a little bit late for the meeting time. When I got there, the guides and their clients were all gathered around the owner of the shop, and I could tell it was a bit of a somber mood for a bunch of people that are about to go fishing. And so I quickly realized, why that atmosphere was the way it was. The owner was talking about some clients that they had the previous month, a grandfather and his grandson who had been out on a guided tour and were attacked by a bear. So they were sort of going over safety as it relates to fishing the areas we're going to be in terms of the bear population. And they were informing us that there are 2 types of bears in the regions where we will be fishing, brown bears and black bears. The black bear is a more aggressive, more territorial bear, and that was the bear responsible for the attack the month before. And so, the old wives' tale about if you see a bear, play dead, like they teach in the cartoons. In fact, if you do that, you're likely to end up dead. That's not the thing to do, actually. And said, one of the things they said to do is to make a loud noise to try to frighten the bear off. And so they passed out these little whistles, not like an officiating whistle, more of a thinner one, on a lanyard to wear. And then if you encountered a bear, you would blow that loudly, and hopefully the bear would run away. The other item that they passed out was like a pepper spray that you're supposed to carry on your fishing vest, and if the whistle didn't work, then you could use this pepper spray to shoo the bear away. And so the brown bears, the black bears, brown bear is not as aggressive, and so they wanted us to be aware of what territory we might be in as we hiked along the river there. And so the next thing they passed around were samples of bear scat, bear droppings, so that if you saw it on the ground, you could identify whose territory you were in. And so first, the brown bear, the less aggressive bear sample passed around, and I've handled a lot of that in my lifetime. It was kind of unusual, but I looked down at it, and I could see some remains of vegetation and maybe some bones of some small woodlands creature in there. And I passed it on to the gentleman next to me, and I reached for the black bear droppings. I looked down. It had little whistles in it and smelled peppery. Well, last year at this time, we were sort of in the wake of an event that I think I would classify as a black swan event. Perhaps you've heard this term, black swan event. These are events that have a very low probability of occurring, but when they do occur, they have an outsized impact. And usually black swan events are associated with financial markets. But I think in many ways, the election in November of last year, 2016, was that type of event. It was highly unexpected, and the impact, I think, is going to be outsized. And so the question was, last year I posed, I had to change my forecast in September. I was like anyone else, assuming that Hillary Clinton would be elected, and so based on that, there'd be a certain set of policies her administration would follow, and I incorporated those policies into my forecasting. Well, suddenly woke up, and that's not the case, and I had to revisit the whole set of projections in our fourth quarter forecast. And so, my question was, what impact would the Trump administration have on the outlook for the U.S. economy, this different set of policies that nobody was anticipating? And I suggested last year, you might recall if you were here, would Trump be able to lift us up where we belong as far as economic growth was concerned? Because this economic recovery has been historically weak. It's averaged 2% per year prior to the election. The question was, would the Trump administration bump us up to a higher 3% plus rate of growth that we've seen historically, or the alternative was knock us into the atmosphere for a fiery reentry back to Earth. And I mentioned a movie from the 1980s last year. It was An Officer and a Gentleman, and that Lift Us Up Where We Belong. Up Where We Belong is a song. It was a theme song for that movie. It was a duet by Joe Cocker and Jennifer Warren. How many people saw the movie that was a... There you go. Even some men are raising their hands. It was a theme song to it's okay. It's good. It's progress. It was a theme song to a movie called Officer and a Gentleman, right? And that starred Richard Gere and Deborah Winger. And quick synopsis again. Richard Gere was a naval flight officer trainee at the base in a northeast industrial town where Deborah Winger worked in a factory. She was a blue-collar lady working in a cardboard factory. Of course, they met, fall in love, and the final scene, Richard Gere in his white dress uniform comes onto the factory floor, picks up Deborah Winger, and carries her off to a life of bliss, I presume. And her friends are clapping, and, even her frenemies are like, all right, girl, you got that one, And then the song kicks in. Love lifts us up where we belong. Everybody. Fred, it wasn't a tough decision when I abandoned my singing career to go into economics. As you might imagine, that was a pretty easy choice. And so, is Trump doing for the economy what Richard Gere did for Deborah Winger? Is he lifting us up where we belong? I asked that question. Is he going to be able to take us in his orange arms and lift the economy up? That was the question. And my answer, which I'll repeat here shortly, was yes. based on the economic policies that were being proposed and now that we see being implemented, the economic growth was likely to accelerate going forward under this set of policies. And I also noted that many of us looked a lot like Joe Cocker after the election, with a sort of contorted face, the way he used to do on stage. Now, those of you that looked like that the day after the election probably still look like that today. And even some of us that didn't look like that probably have made that face more than once over the course of the past year, that's for sure. But what's happened in year one of the Trump administration? What does it mean for the economy? Well, first of all, we saw tax reform go through. This is significant on a couple of levels, both on the personal side, the corporate side. On the personal side, lower tax rates across all tax brackets, a near doubling of the standard deduction. So that means what? Well, that means more take-home pay, beginning as early as February for a lot of workers. They're going to see bigger paychecks as a result of that. The doubling of the standard deduction means filing taxes is going to be easier for a lot of folks who will no longer have to itemize and go through that arduous process of filing your taxes. And that's significant as well and a benefit to our economy. The IRS estimates that to do the 1040 form, it takes about 20 to 23 hours to complete. Now, that's their estimate. It seems like it takes me forever, but for many people, they won't have to do that. I mean, that's a half a work week of woman power or manpower that's not doing audits, that's not giving lectures, that's not producing manufactured products, that's not delivering any goods and services. It's just time and effort that goes into paying taxes. So it's a deadweight loss for our society and our economy. So anything that can shrink that down, I think, is a net plus. The caps on the mortgage and state and local tax deductions, most people, the mortgage amounts are so high that it's not really going to have an impact on them. State and local taxes, this does have an impact for those people living in high-tax states. And for Florida, that's kind of good for us because it further tilts the scales in our favor in terms of the tax environment here in the state relative to a California, to a New York, to a New Jersey. And so this will likely feed into the population growth I'll talk about shortly. On the corporate side, this was big. Corporate taxes were cut from a nominal 35% down to 21%. That 35% was the highest in the industrialized world. Actual tax rates were a little bit lower than that, but we were still in the top three. And that led many companies to move production and profits overseas, to play a shell game in order to minimize their overall tax bill. By lowering this tax rate, that incentive to play the shell game has been reduced significantly. In addition to the lower tax rates, there's this temporary bonus rate for repatriation of profits which are currently being held overseas by U.S. companies. Estimates of that figure are around $3 trillion that are held overseas by U.S. companies. Bringing that back to the U.S. and some portion of that will generate a windfall of revenue for the government, number one, but also a windfall of investment funds. And we saw recently, yesterday I believe, Apple announced it's bringing back some $350 billion that were currently held overseas. That's going to generate $38 billion in revenue for the government that it wouldn't have had in absence of this. That also means that money is going to be able to fund the second Apple headquarters and other investments that the company might make here in the U.S. because now the relative rate of return of investing in the U.S. has been improved by lowering that tax rate. So it's a good thing. And when companies invest and they build new plants and purchase new equipment, it's good for the workers too. Because a worker that has better equipment is a more productive worker. And workers' wages and salaries are based on our productivity, the value of what we produce. When you produce more, you're worth more. And so this is going to feed into wage and salary growth in 2018 and beyond. And that's been a real missing piece of the economic recovery puzzle. So these are good things. There's some small business items in this tax law as far as expensing investment equipment immediately. That will stimulate small businesses to spend that money. How pass-through income is being treated has changed. Again, that's going to raise profitability, raise investment. The other item I pointed to last year in discussing what impact this administration might have on the economy has to do with regulation. And it was 2 years ago, and I'm sure you've long blocked the memories of that presentation out, but I shared with you an academic research paper, which I'm loath to do to normal people. But this paper was very interesting because it showed the impact on the U.S. economy of regulation. And I had a chart that, that's probably the only thing, if you remember, was this chart of the pages in the Code of Federal Regulations from 1949 to 2005. And it was one of those charts that sort of looked like Bitcoin before the collapse. Okay, I mean, it was just going up. That Code of Federal Regulations over that time period increased by 7-fold to about 190,000 pages. During that time period, these authors estimated real GDP growth was reduced by 2% per year. And that meant that in 2005, the U.S. real gross domestic product, which was $15 trillion, would have been $45 trillion if regulations had been at 1949 levels. And my point, and the author's point, was let's not roll back regulations to where they were back then. We don't need acid rain. We don't need polluted waters. We don't need Lake Erie, looking like Jell-O. But that regulations come with a cost. We teach in our classes regulations are like a tax. When you tax something, you get less of it. The same is true when you regulate something, you get less of it. Sometimes that's a good thing, but the point is regulations are not implemented in a vacuum. There's a cost associated, and the cost of the regulation has to be vetted against the benefit that that regulation might convey. And so revisiting these regulations, and you can see up on the screen, there's been, thus far, 22 deregulatory actions for every one regulatory action. This is a pretty big, that pace won't be able to be maintained, of course, but the push towards reevaluating the regulatory environment, which in many ways I believe has kept this economic recovery as subdued as it has been. Most economists were saying we're going to see a real sharp rebound when the Great Recession ended. That didn't pan out. What we got was the gravy boat recovery. And a big part of that was all these new regulations that were being heaped on an economy trying to recover from a severe economic and financial trauma. So this is a good thing. Now, thus far, 1 year in, the new administration has avoided what I've called Sky Mall policies. And per the mayor's tweet last year, I'm going to recount the epiphany that I had when I came up with this term Sky Mall policy. Sky Mall policy is a policy that is expensive and doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And we've seen quite a few of these, whether we're talking about the 2009 Foreclosure Prevention Act. Remember that? It's a good one. It's supposed to stop the wave of foreclosures sweeping across the U.S. That didn't work out well. But I came up with the Sky Mall policy notion. I had an epiphany. Sky Mall, many of you may know, younger folks may not, was a magazine that was on commercial airlines. It was a glossy catalog, and I always loved to grab Sky Mall when I was on a plane. It took my mind off of my patellas being shattered by the seatmate in front of me, and just made me happy in general, because I would see things in that magazine that were just amazing. Products I didn't know existed, products that I didn't know I had to have until I saw them. I mean, it had never occurred to me that I could have a 6-foot statue of Sasquatch in my yard. But Sky Mall could make that possible. And so I would see these things that looked like great ideas up at 36,000 feet. But usually when I got back down to earth, I came to my senses. I'm like, the hoe is not going to be happy if I've got Yeti in my front yard. I better not order that, or I'm going to get a nasty letter. And so most of the time I didn't order. But there was one time I did place an order, and it led to this epiphany. And this was the item I purchased. This was an industrial-strength clothes steamer. And I saw this thing, and I was like, wow. This is the answer to my prayers. I hate to iron. Most people do. I'm tall, so getting the ironing board legs to fully extend is always a hassle, and then your fingers are constantly pinched in the process of doing it. Irons, the little hole you put the water in, it's impossible to fill those up at any sink because they just sit, just splashes everywhere. And dry cleaning is the other option. That's expensive, but the worst thing to me is it's 2 more things on the to-do list. And also I want to point something out. You've heard the term, the phrase, expression, banker's hours. Like bankers have these easy hours. It should be dry cleaners hours. These places close at like 4 o'clock. You know, I'm rushing from work trying to get a suit, and I'm like, well, you're closed. It's 4:30. What, you know? So I saw this, and I'm like, my wrinkle days are over. I'll never iron again. I'm never going to the dry cleaner. My industrial strength clothes steamer is going to do it. I ordered it, tracked it online, took the day off from work when it was being delivered. And here comes Santa Claus in brown bringing me my steamer. And I was happy, and I unpacked it. I filled it up with water, plugged it in, turned it on. The picture on the screen doesn't do it justice. The wand that the woman's holding there, there's like a little cirrus cloud coming out of it. No. Steam was billowing out of this wand. I mean, it was like I was holding Old Faithful in the palm of my hand. It was like some picture of Yellowstone, you know, like with, it was just an amazing sight. And one of the most beautiful moments of my life, really. And I was so excited that day. And that was the first time I'd used it. The second time, which turned out to be the last time I used the steamer, was prior to a speaking event. And the suit was wrinkled. I was psyched to get Old Faithful out and magically erase the wrinkles. It didn't happen that way. The wrinkles did not magically fall out. And so I spent 10 minutes, then 15, then 20 minutes trying to get my suit unwrinkled, which had been in the suitcase. And it just wasn't happening. I had to go. I was going to be late. So I was very disappointed. I took my wrinkled suit off the hanger and I put it on. Not only was it a wrinkled suit, it was a wet suit. And that, when I walked out of the house in that wet, wrinkled suit, I was so angry at the money I'd spent on this thing, angry it didn't solve the problem it was supposed to. But then I had this epiphany. SkyMall had a catalog filled with economic policies. And that's where some of these gems in the Beltway were coming from. And so we need to avoid economic SkyMall policies, and we haven't seen any yet from the Trump administration, and hopefully we won't. SkyMall's in bankruptcy. They don't print the catalog anymore. I've already been through grief counseling and all that, but they still have a website. So I was flying recently over the holidays, and I logged on to skymall.com. I just want to share a couple items I came across. This is interesting. This is a way to sort of signal to your neighbors that you're the laziest people in the neighborhood, because instead of shoveling your sidewalk, you throw down this carpet on the snow and then just walk over it. And I guess then when it snows again, you throw down another carpet and you end up with sort of a vanilla wafer cookie by the end of the winter. I'm not sure, but I don't know how many of those you sell. Here's a great idea. Let's force somebody with mobility issues to carry around their lunch on a tray as they're struggling to get from point A to point B. It seems cruel almost. I don't know, but this is what they're trying to sell. This is interesting. Well, you're looking. This is a vintage ice cube tray. Vintage. This is an interesting term that I think marketing people like now. My daughters like to go to this Urban Outfitters store. Yeah, and they've got these vintage things in there. Like, here's some vintage Dickies pants, that some mechanic was wearing and gave to Goodwill, and now Urban Outfitters is going to resell them to me for $90. Or the Walkman, the cassette Walkman, they're trying to resell that. There's nothing like that vintage experience of having the tape get garbled in the player and trying to take a pencil to wind it back into the cassette. Vintage isn't always a good thing. And I saw this thing, and I'm thinking, vintage? I don't want to relive the vintage experience of my flesh touching that ice-cold aluminum and sticking to it, where I have to run to the faucet to stop frostbite from setting in. Or the other vintage experience I recall is reaching for that ice cube tray and find there's no ice cubes in it. I don't know. Vintage isn't always good. Here's a not-so-good idea, too. This is... For those of you who had kids, you've all gone through the potty training bit, and you usually have a little mini commode that sits in the bathroom. I had girls, so I didn't really have any boys, but this is a potty trainer urinal. Right. So you stick this on the wall of your bathroom to teach your son how to pee standing up using a urinal. This does not look like the smartest idea I've ever seen. I mean, let's master the sit-down thing. They got years to figure out the urinal. I mean, get the sit-down done. The other thing is, this kid looks like he's been down on Wall Street all night. He's leaning up against the wall, Anyway. The labor market continues to grow. Jobs are being added nationally. We're in the 9th year of economic recovery. We're not going to add 500,000 jobs a month. This cycle is too mature for that to happen. But if these policies work as they can, we can bump that hiring up to around 200,000 a month, which at this state in the game is a pretty good situation. As Mayor Jacobs says, we're pretty much at full employment, certainly here in Orange County. If not, we're very close. And nationally, we're getting there. Historically, an unemployment rate around 4%, I was taught that's full employment and then some when I was coming through college. But in this particular cycle, we've had a lot of people leave the labor force, so there's still some labor out there that can be lured back in. And so unemployment could drift lower from here. But I think what we will see in 2018 is wage and salary growth. The labor market's getting tight. That's going to feed into faster wage and faster salary growth. That's going to be coupled with this tax relief so that disposable income gets a boost, not just from lower taxes, but from higher salaries. And all of that's coming together here in 2018. So there really is a convergence of events that I think is going to lead to a significant increase in growth this year. I think real GDP is going to expand in 2018 by about 3.5%. I would not be shocked if that number approached 4%, quite frankly. When you hear announcements like Apple bringing back $350 billion to our economy, and many other companies to follow suit, this is a significant impetus to economic growth. Confidence is high. I don't know if you've been paying attention to the stock market. It's been doing all right. Housing values, as Mayor Jacobs mentioned, continue to rise. There's been trillions of dollars of wealth created. Those balance sheets that during the financial crisis and the Great Recession, people's 401ks were cut in half. Nest eggs looked like Humpty Dumpty. Wealth had been severely depleted. We've made all that wealth back and tens of trillions of dollars more in the aggregate. That feeds into consumer spending. When you see your retirement accounts, you're more willing to spend money out of your paycheck today as you see them grow. So I think things are looking pretty good going forward nationally. Concerns? Sure. Geopolitical? Absolutely. The Fed may be pulling the trigger too rapidly on interest rate hikes. There's a lot of things that could knock us off track. But right now, the momentum's there. And it'll be nice to have a national economic environment which is much stronger than the one that we've been in, because we've been outperforming that economy. It'll be nice to have a bit of a tailwind from the national economy, and I think we're going to see that develop in 2018. Here in Florida, the housing market, is the mayor pointed out, very tight, depending on where you are in the state. Some areas are much tighter than others. That's feeding into faster appreciation of home prices, plain and simple. This is monthly data in blue from Florida Realtors. Red's a 12-month moving average. These are sales of single-family existing homes. We're now above where we were at the height of the housing bubble in terms of sales. In terms of median prices, prices have not returned fully to those levels statewide, but they continue to rise at a rapid pace, and that's being driven by low inventories, by a shortage in housing, and by here's the statewide data. The bottom line is what I'd like to point out most importantly, and that is the inventory of existing single-family homes, the months of inventory, and it's 3.8 as of the November report. Most economists, housing economists, would suggest that 6 to 9 months of inventory is a balanced market between supply and demand. Anything less than that is a seller's market, which is another way of saying there's a shortage of housing. Anything more than that's a buyer's market, which means there's a surplus. So we're clearly in the seller's market. We're clearly in a shortage situation. And in any market, as you recall from your economics classes, when you have a shortage, prices rise. The bigger the shortage, the more rapidly prices rise to eliminate that shortage. And so that's what's driving these price appreciation, 9%, 10%. It's not a bubble. We don't have that easy finance that was in place in 2004, 2005, 2006. That allowed for speculative activity. That's what fueled those double-digit price increases then. This time, it's fundamentals of demand and fundamentals of supply that have created a shortage in housing in our state. Here in Orlando, you can see the figures. Inventory is extremely low, 2.8 months, and you can see the corresponding increase in price. You know, the lower the inventory, the bigger the shortage, faster prices are rising. That's only going to be alleviated by the supply side of the market because demand's not ceasing. Population growth, job growth continues to be robust. That feeds housing demand. We have to catch up on the supply side in order to bring these price appreciation rates down. But what we had, and this is statewide housing starts, you can see the bars are housing starts. And there was two periods, 2013, 2014, and in 2015 into 2016, where housing starts sort of plateaued for some reason. And, you know, I haven't done the full research into explaining why that is. I think there's a variety of explanations from, you know, financial regulation to, you know, builders not wanting a repeat of what they'd been through the last cycle. But during those time periods, population and job growth were continuing. Since 2012, Florida's been outperforming the national economy. More people, more jobs. These are the drivers of housing, the real drivers of housing, the fundamental underpinnings of the housing market. But building leveled out. And so we got behind the curve, and I think we're still there. But once we catch up, and I think this will happen in the next couple of years, then we'll see that price appreciation start to moderate. I mentioned population growth. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's economic development for dummies. You put more people in a region, in a state, the economy will grow. It happens by default. And Florida's population, there are several streams that are flowing into this river of new Floridians, which now is back to this 1,000 new Floridians a day. You've got domestic migration. We've got those baby boomers looking at those sweet 401ks and you know, sub-zero temperatures. Put those two together, I'm going to Florida. So we're going to continue to get that. That wave of population is still moving into the retirement age, and that's going to last for years. We've got economic migrants who are going to move to the state for job opportunities, and we continue to produce those, especially as we hit full employment and we start to see wages rise. And we also have a natural increase. Births exceed deaths in Florida. So we're making more people faster than we're losing them. And then the third stream of population growth is international immigration to the state. And Florida continues to be a magnet for Latin America immigration and other parts of the world as well. And you put that all together, population growth looks solid. And it looks solid for the foreseeable future, and that's going to continue to drive the economy. Unemployment, it's on par with what we're seeing nationally here in Florida, a little bit below the national unemployment rate. The lowest we saw it during the housing bubble was 3.3%, which I didn't even think was a possibility statistically or arithmetically, but we could see rates approach that over the next couple of years, but we're getting close to really the limits of how low unemployment can grow. State GDP, or real gross state product, 2016, the last full year data that we had, Florida grew at 3%. The United States economy grew at 1.5%. We're growing twice as fast as the U.S. in 2016, and growth is still outpacing the national economy, and I think we'll continue to do so. Payroll employment, we've seen over the past 7 years, some 1.4 million jobs added to business payrolls in Florida. So we've recovered everything that was lost from the Great Recession and added tens of thousands of more jobs to that total. And we're not quite doubling the rate of job growth that we're seeing nationally. That gap is closing a little bit between Florida and the U.S., but we're still significantly ahead in terms of the pace of job creation in the state. Construction was booming before Irma. Rebuilding, reconstruction. I still see a lot of tarps up on roofs. I just got mine down finally, but the demand for workers in this area is going to continue to grow, and finding those workers I think is more the problem than finding jobs for those workers. Professional business services, white collar jobs, one of the fastest growing in the state. Leisure and hospitality. Statewide, I think we're going to see growth ease a little bit over the next couple of years. It's been on a monster run since 2010, and nothing from hurricanes to Zika to currency collapses has been able to derail the sector. And I think that growth will continue. I just think it's going to moderate over the next couple of years. The financial sector, I think the deregulation we talked about earlier is something that's going to benefit the financial sector that was really being crushed under the weight of Dodd-Frank and all the uncertainty associated with that. We're going to finally see that sector grow. There's been very little new bank creation in the state of Florida over the past 10 years. I think about two banks over that entire period. And that's not healthy for any industry. You always want to have new firms entering it, pushing innovation and challenging existing firms. Growth by sector statewide, looking pretty solid. Population growth, Orlando very strong here, faster than what we're seeing statewide. That feeds into the economy, that feeds into housing demand, that feeds into job growth, which remains quite robust, as the mayor said, among the strongest in the nation. That's likely to continue. The momentum is here in the region. Private investment, public investment, billions of dollars of projects. There's a tremendous amount of momentum. There's a lot of exciting things happening. I think the tax bill is going to provide a lot of opportunities to score more headquarters, more expansions here in the region, and I think we have a lot to offer. Things are looking quite good. For the four-county area, job growth much faster than we're projecting for the state as a whole. And you can see the sectors that are up there. High-paying jobs, professional business services, the financial sector, all showing robust growth. Construction as well. These are good-paying jobs, and we're going to see a lot more of them in the years to come. I'm running low on time, and I thought I had fewer slides this year. Do you want to come up? These will be posted, I think, on the county website and available for download. We have projections here for Orange County specifically, and you can see the numbers there look good as well, whether it's gross county product, population, job growth. You can see where we've come since 2010, and it's a long way, baby, I guess was the old cigarette commercial, but Orange County has come a long way. I think the outlook is incredibly bright for 2018. I think the momentum's there. I think we're in a good place economically. I think we're in a great place geographically, and thank you for coming out to listen to me again. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean. And Sean, if you can hold tight for a couple minutes, we have a few moments to take some questions from our audience. We have the first one up here already. How has the influx of Puerto Ricans affected our local talent pool, and how are companies looking to do business in Orange County reacting to the growth of our new residents?
Yeah, I've been asked this question quite a few times, in the wake of Hurricane Maria, but the exodus of Puerto Ricans to the mainland, to Central Florida, there's a huge community here in Orlando and Tampa, along I-4, and also in New York. That exodus was occurring prior to the hurricane. I think the hurricane has just catalyzed that movement because of the fiscal and the economic crisis on the island. I think a lot of Puerto Ricans were moving in here. What does that mean? Well, I think there'll be some transition issues. Licensing and professional certifications are different in Florida than they are in Puerto Rico, and so there'll be some frictions, I think, in terms of absorbing these folks. But I also, we looked at the state of the labor market. We've got solid job growth, low unemployment. We're as well poised to absorb these new residents here in Orange County as we could be, quite frankly. And I think we'll be able to do so. One other point, Houston saw a very large exodus or influx of people from Hurricane Katrina. But these folks were largely poor, uneducated, and all from sort of one segment of sort of the socioeconomic ladder. And so you had this big influx, and that's hard to absorb when you have that kind of a concentration. But when it comes to Puerto Ricans, I think we're getting people all up and down the socioeconomic ladder. And so I think that integration is not as challenging as when you just have a block of low-skilled people and trying to find them jobs and housing and so forth. So I think we're in good shape to handle the influx.
Okay, we got another question that's popped up. And again, remember, you can also raise your hands, and we'll get the microphones to you as well. Next question, Sean, could you speak to the relative change in household income?
Yeah, well, it depends what measure of income we're talking about. If we're talking about personal income, which is income from all sources, from investments and so forth, we've seen very strong growth. Financial markets have been on a tear, and that's created a tremendous amount of wealth. We've seen housing values rise. That creates a flow of wealth. What we haven't seen yet, this missing piece, is wage and salary growth. And we're on the cusp of that. We've started to see some hints of it. I think we see it full scale settling in 2018. You combine that with reduced tax rates, that means that people are going to have more in their wallets, in their pocketbooks, in their purses, for those that carry them, to spend. And we, consumers, are 70% of the economy. So when we start ramping up our spending, we're going to have a big effect on economic growth.
Okay, got another one that's popped up here. What will the ultimate impact of tax reform be on the federal deficit?
Well, Phil, if you're a fiscal conservative, a deficit hawk, I would recommend the 2-liter bottle of Mylanta at Costco. It's going to be a rough 4 years. Well, to be honest with you, yes, it's going to add to the deficit most likely. But we've added over the past 8 years, $9-10 trillion to that deficit. It's a problem. It's not a short-run problem. It's a long-run problem. And President Obama put together early in his first term the Simpson-Bowles Bipartisan Debt and Deficit Reduction Commission, and they put together a report. And if you Google that and look that up, you might be the first person to look at it since it was written, because it was stuck in the Library of Congress somewhere. No one did anything with it. But it lays out what has to happen. And to fix this problem, it's not tweaks, it's not raise this tax rate. Entitlements have to be fixed, or you're not going to solve this problem. In the short run, we're going to see deficits likely rise. It'll be mitigated in part by faster growth, but the long-run solution certainly is not in this tax bill.
Next question is very appropriate, given that Central Florida is in the world's eyes when it comes to visitors that come here, a big part of our economy. How do you foresee Brexit having an impact, or any impact, on UK visitors coming here to Central Florida?
Well, it hasn't been, and speaking to the mayor earlier, it hasn't been as traumatic as many were expecting it or declaring it to be, that Brexit was going to be this sort of calamity for the UK economy, and it was just going to sort of sink into the North Sea. What did happen immediately, we saw the pound depreciate in wake of the uncertainty, and this is a process that's going to be carried out over a period of years. The reality is the UK existed before the EU. It prospered before the EU. They'll find a way to work this out. I think the short-run uncertainty has been mitigated somewhat. I think the pound has recovered some of its value, but I think the immediate impacts were, hey, now every bottle of sunscreen is 10% more expensive for every Brit that comes over to visit the area. And so, prices have an impact, but there hasn't been a tremendous downside yet for the economy as a whole.
Great. All righty, folks, any other questions from the audience? All right, with that, we'll get ready to wrap this up here. Folks, I think you understand when I said that Sean Snaith shatters the notion of the stereotypical economist that you might have had in your minds before you came here this morning. My boss often jokes that I have the ability to take the simple and make it complex. Sean has that wonderful talent and skill set that I wish I had. He can take the very complex and make it understandable to all of us. You can see why I call him Florida's economist. Please join me in thanking once again Dr. Sean Snaith. How often do you hear an economist use the word Sasquatch, Sky Mall, industrial strength, hand steamer? And boy, I tell you, Sean, those two images you put up there will be frighteningly embedded in my memory. The one with President Trump and Deborah Winger, that will cause some nightmares there. And then I think the one that's really going to keep me up at night is that stick-on training urinal. That's a scary one there. But folks, you did hear first, in the same sentence, you heard the words Brad Pitt and Sean Snaith. Please join me once again in thanking Sean Snaith. Thanks. Well, folks, we're very fortunate to have with us a panel of some extremely successful local business leaders and entrepreneurs that will be joining us in just a second. They're going to be led and guided under the tutelage of Mr. Tim Giuliani. And for some of you, this is the first time you've had the chance to meet or hear from Tim Giuliani. And I want to appropriately introduce Tim, who will then in turn bring up his panel here this morning. And this is again the panel on funding and growing your tech enterprise here in Central Florida. Tim Giuliani is currently the president of the Orlando Economic Partnership. He's a past president, immediate past president of the Raleigh Chamber of Commerce. He's a national board member for the Association of Chamber Executives. But he is no stranger to us in Central Florida. Tim was born and raised in St. Augustine, Florida. He was previously a president for the Gainesville Chamber of Commerce. He was on the executive management team for the Florida Chamber of Commerce. And while Tim is a big Gator fan, he also went to school at Florida State University, and now he's working closely with our hometown university, UCF. And Tim, just to help you with kind of balancing the loyalties when it comes to that troika of those three great schools, I want to share with you three important numbers: 79, 54, and 6. 79, 54, and 6. Those are the respective end-of-year rankings for the football teams of Florida, Florida State, and UCF. And of course, that number 6 ranking is also the national champions ranking, at least in my book, and always will be. But speaking of championships, there is no better champion when it comes to professional who leads a community in the economic development goals and dreams for a community. And as a father of 3, every day, Tim has his eye on the ball for how do we lay down the necessary planks to support our economic prosperity. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Tim Giuliani.
Thanks, Fred. Thanks, Mayor, for having me and the partnership here to participate and really talk about our economy and the future of our economy. And Sean, I'm wondering, you had to win at least $100 to somehow manage to get in the potty training urinal into a presentation. Well done. So, for us, it's an honor to be here and part of an important discussion about the economy. And as we've already talked about, the growth is the story. And so when we look at the growth, to put it into hard numbers, so the youngest of my 3 children began kindergarten this year, which means she'll graduate in 2030. So not too far along, we know how fast that can go. We'll have 1.3 million new residents here in Central Florida in our 7-county region by the time she graduates. So the change is going to impact every aspect of our region. And it's going to take an important concerted effort to make sure that we strategize for that growth and that we lead it towards broad-based prosperity. So our regions has really come together at this important time as we embark on even the next stage of our growth. So I want to give you an example of coming together. So a few months ago, Amazon decided to kind of defy all tradition and launch a national and actually continental search for a second headquarters. So there were submittals from 238 different cities, and we were right in the middle of that competition. We had partners in the region from the education standpoint, transportation standpoint, you name it, the arts community, that all rallied around this effort for this region to be able to compete at a national level. So from the spaceport to our airports, railways, roadways, this region's made a $10 billion investment in our infrastructure. When it comes to talent, which has become the currency of economic development, and it's one of our strongest assets. We have 500,000 college students within a 100-mile radius of Orlando. So not only does our talent pool run deep today, but it will long into the future. And when you look around America, you're hard-pressed to find a community that's made these types of investments in talent, in infrastructure. And so I'll cut to the chase, and many of you saw the news yesterday that Amazon did not include Orlando in their shortlist. So, of course, were we all disappointed? I think so. We certainly were. But certainly not deterred about what the future holds for us and the competitiveness that our region has improved. So we're already looking ahead. The process had us go through a process of reevaluating and upgrading all of our marketing materials, our messaging, understanding the labor pool. And in fact, we've been preparing, kind of the sentiment that we had is we've been preparing to take this next step for more than a decade. It's the regional planning that's extended beyond what we think of as economic development to education, sustainability, and advancing technologies. Because we're living in an innovation-driven economy and culture. But we're a growth region, and Mayor Jacobs hit on this, our international airports, the cultural venues, the diverse and creative workforce. This is certainly not Central Florida that we knew 10 years ago. And that's certainly why companies like KPMG, who's building this $430 million training center, that's why USTA, that's why Deloitte has added over 2,000, almost 2,000 jobs in our region in the last 2 years. So companies are noticing what we have and that we're a hub for growth. And then we have another competitive advantage that's completely intangible and doesn't show up on any chart. And it's that spirit of embracing our diversity. It's about collaboration. And that's what is allowing us to compete against bigger cities in the U.S. So our 7-county region's growing at 1,000 people every week. If we're a state, we'd be the 25th largest state. So our economy functions as a region. And it's amazing to think that we would be an average-sized state if our region were indeed that. And over this next 12, 13 years, when we get to 2030, to keep an unemployment rate similar to what we have today, we got to create 500,000 new jobs in Central Florida. So it sounds like a daunting task, but we have the wind at our back because of these investments. But we need to take into account disruptors like automation. So if you look, and just taking, for instance, what it could mean to our service sector, kind of the hardest line studies show that 60% of the jobs that exist today in Orlando would be automatable by 2025. Now, do these bold predictions ever come all the way true? Not normally. But does it mean that it's going to be a disruptor, and do we need to take it serious and really focus on the worker, the skills, the training? Go to Wawa, look at the garbage getting picked up. You order a sub from a kiosk and your trash gets picked up by a robotic arm instead of 2 guys jumping off the back. So the economy is certainly changing, and the theme is technology. Even, just look at machine learning. So Google's artificial intelligence unit, they're using machine learning software to take over the work of creating machine learning software. So the robots and the machines are getting smarter, which puts an added demand on the workforce and for all of us to get smarter. So I want to close and transition to our panel, but I want to show you part of the branding campaign. It was part of the Amazon proposal as well, but it's a sense of pride of what our region has to offer. Captured with Orlando, you don't know the half of it.
Okay, time for a reality check. Time to toss aside what most people think Orlando has to offer. This is a great place to vacation. It's also an amazing place to live and a smart place to do business. Orlando is home to thinkers and innovators. After all, this is the region that took man to the moon. We have big-time dreamers and exceptional leaders who come together to accomplish great things for the community. Orlando's population is exploding. Our people are young, educated, experienced, hardworking, diverse, and talented. Sure, we believe in magic, but most of all, we believe in the power of imagination. We know how to get around because we believe in planning for the future, charting our own course, staying ahead of our explosive growth, connecting people and moving products. Our bold vision has gotten us this far. We think smarter and play harder. Welcome to the Orlando you only thought you knew.
So we talk about being creative, and I just tested you. I wonder what video just rolled through your own mind. You like that, Fred? Good. That's called a recovery. So if you go, just set up a to-do. So if you go on Orlando Economic Partnership's Facebook page, on January 11th, we posted that video that's been viewed thousands of times already. So go on to the Facebook site, hit share, and share that with your friends and show a sense of pride of what our region's all about, what our economy's all about, and what's catching these companies' attention. So I'll turn now to our panel of experts who've taken their ideas, built companies, and are quite frankly just improving the lives of people all around. And rather than provide you with detailed information on each one, the bios are in your programs, and so I'm going to call them up on stage now. So first we have Sanira Madhani, co-founder and CEO of Fat Merchant. We have Courtney Powell, president and owner of ACE Applications. We have Sean Siepler, CEO of Clean the World, and Chris Switlow, CEO of Educate. So when we look at the analysis of why we didn't make the short list on Amazon, we need to use that as a learning, and certainly part of the answer and part of the learning is going to be growing our tech community and growing the tech workforce. And our panel discussion is going to focus on the available resources for entrepreneurs and small business owners, how they utilize them, and how their own personal experiences might inform those that you're going to make. So before we get started, I want to remind you that you can take to Twitter. You can either use hashtag or pound. They both work equally as well. So hashtag OC Summit, 2 M's, 1 I, 18, and you can ask your questions online. So as we get started, we're gonna start in the red chair, the hot seat. That's why it's red. So tell us a little bit about your company, maybe a minute and a half.
Sure. So I work for a company called Educate. I founded that organization. Educate is an online software application that provides employees access to financial guidance in order to navigate how they spend their paycheck, and more importantly, how they select their benefits and continue to improve upon their lives as we all kind of navigate our own financial challenges year over year. I think traditionally we think of financial stress coming from the negative aspects of what happens to us and not being able to budget or have emergency funds. But what we find is even navigating things like the hurricane when you need to figure out how to deal with your insurance, or if you have a new family member who's coming along the way because you're expanding on your family. There's a lot of positive things that happen in your lives where you are undergoing financial stress, and so by providing employees access to that guidance, it really helps increase their productivity and reduce the amount of anxiety they have as they go throughout their day.
Good, thanks. Sanira?
Hi, everyone. I'm Sanira Madani, CEO and founder of a payment technology company here in Orlando called Fat Merchant. The FAT stands for Fast, Affordable Transaction Technology, but it's meant to be fun. Fat Merchant, what we do is, our claim to fame is that we're the first subscription-based merchant services provider. So that's how we started back in 2014. We offer unlimited credit card processing for small to medium-sized businesses for a flat monthly subscription. So in essence, we end up saving them 30 to 40% on processing fees. However, the technology side is what really differentiates us, because we've created full omni-channel integrated payments, which means in the human world is that any way a business needs to accept payment. So let's take Sally's Cupcakes, for example. She takes payments when you walk into her store. You take payment at a terminal or at the point of sale. She now has an online shopping cart where you can order cupcakes online. She may go to bridal shows and take those transactions with a mobile device. And also, when she gets a large catering order, she can may use her QuickBooks to send an invoice to the bride for her cake. So now this one merchant is using payments in 4 different ways, 4 different solutions, 4 different sets of fees, but none of them talk to each other. So there's no way for her to know the health of her business in the palm of her hand. And what we've been able to do at Fat Merchant is, 1, create proprietary technology for each of those different types of payment solutions, or we can integrate with what she's using today and kind of combine all of that data into one single source so that she can manage her business every single day. So that's what we do.
Oh, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Courtney Powell. I'm president and CEO of ACE Applications, and we're a software development, systems integration, and IT staffing company for businesses, schools, and governments. Some of our projects have included work with GOA, or the Orlando International Airport, where we've recently designed their company intranet for their employees, as well as the tenant airports, the airlines. We've also been a part of the team that implemented the new mobile app at the airport to allow passengers to find their flights or to find restaurants. And most recently, we're a part of the team implementing the toll system upgrade for the Central Florida Expressway Authority, where we designed and built a new software called the Law Enforcement Notification System. And what that does is it ties into the tolling infrastructure, so that if there is an Amber Alert violator or any type of criminal alert that are using the toll lanes, our software will match their license plate and provide real-time notification to law enforcement. We have about 15 employees. We're on the east side of Orlando, and we're happy to be here this morning.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
Good morning. I'm Sean Snaith. I'm the founder and CEO of Clean the World. You know us as the Soap Guys. We launched 9 years ago in a garage in downtown Orlando with this whole idea that we were going to collect the used soaps and bottles from hotels when guests were done using them. We were going to recycle it and send it to children and families all over the world who, in so many cases, were literally dying because of a lack of proper hygiene. 9 years later, we've created a global social enterprise. We are a combined beneficiary corporation, for-profit company, as well as a 501c3. We've sent 40 million bars of soap to kids and families locally into 118 countries across the globe. Since the day we've launched, we've seen a 35% decrease in the death rate to children under the age of 5 that have died because of a lack of proper hygiene, and now been recognized by the United Nations. Clean the World Foundation will be added as the 24th NGO globally to the United Nations WASH cluster by the UN General Assembly just last quarter. Our global clients, our global hospitality, and any other corporation, what we have evolved into is a products company that develops products that help corporations help others. It's a way for them to engage their consumers, engage their employees. And so from an economic standpoint, why does that matter? Because we all value helping others. We all value doing good. It's a new attribute that companies have to have when they look at their workforce, when they look at their consumers, when they look at their shareholders, at us. And so we are helping to provide those products and services and solutions so that our global clients can have that item that you care about and that the economy cares about. So excited to be here and looking forward to some fun.
That's fantastic. This is the story behind the numbers. I mean, we have fantastic numbers, but it's so cool to get to see the people that make this happen. So tell me, we'll start in the middle, Courtney. Tell us maybe one program or service that you use that's available here in Orange County that has really helped your business.
Absolutely. We've used several programs, but most recently, we were members of the UCF Business Incubator, and we recently graduated from the incubator last year, moved out into our own office space. Our membership in the incubator allowed us access to professional commercial office space as well as business advisory services. Yeah. We've also used the services of the National Entrepreneurship Center, worked from the executives of SCORE that gave us business advice. And most recently, as we're transitioning to a second stage company, the Small Business Development Center helped us to put together an advisory board. And so now we have professional volunteers that are in the areas of sales and marketing and strategy that are helping us to advise our company going forward.
That's fantastic. It's another, UCF could be number one in the state. I know Tom O'Neill's here incubating companies, so Central Florida certainly has another success story there. Sunera, let's hear from you.
So similar to Courtney, we did actually have a space in the UCF incubator as well, and we started there. But I really want to highlight Starter Studio, which is a technology accelerator. So when we first launched the company, as I mentioned, it was a subscription. It was the flat pricing play that when we launched, that's what we got traction with. However, we knew that we wanted to build the payment technology, but I don't know how to build technology, and I didn't know where to go. And so I ended up applying for a technology accelerator, which is in downtown Orlando in Canvas, and it changed the course of our business. So within the 12 weeks of that program, we were given amazing mentors, and we had an opportunity to pitch to investors and prepare for what's like the next stage of actually launching and going to market with the technology. I ended up meeting my CTO there, and at the end of demo day, which was where we came out and presented, here's the platform that we created, and kind of bragged about what we've been able to accomplish in those 12 weeks of the accelerator. I asked for $500,000 from the Orlando community for a seed round investment into Fat Merchant. And this is where a lot of people, you don't know the half of it. Everybody thinks that, there is a lack of capital, in our region, and I think that's a challenge for us, and there could be more. But my story was kind of the opposite. I asked the Orlando community for $500,000, and we were oversubscribed to $1.4 million on our seed. From there, we ended up taking $850,000 in our seed round capital, seed capital round. A year later, I raised $1.4 million, again, from all Central Florida investors only. That's something that we've been really proud of. And we grew the company from that first year we were in business. We did $5 million in transactional volume. And this year, we just broke $1.4 billion in processing. And we just also closed on our Series B. So because of that initial investment to get us off the ground, get the company started with our Series A, we went from just 5 employees at the time to roughly around 20. And we just closed on our Series B. I think maybe we're going to touch on it later for another $6 million for our Series B, which did not come from Central Florida. It came from Atlanta. But it was because if I didn't have Starter Studio and the UCF incubator, those resources would not have been there, and Fat Merchant would not have been able to take off the ground.
Good. Yeah, we'll come back to that in a second. Chris, why don't you tell us?
Yeah, so I spent 12 years in corporate environment and was a software nerd at heart and financial analyst as well. But I was trying to figure out, how do you start a company when you don't know how to start a company? And
you didn't go to CEO school?
Yeah, But one of the great things that I was able to plug into was the origination of the Orlando tech community. It was the Orlando Ruby meetup groups and the design meetup groups. And back in those days, and about 7 years ago, we had Startup Weekend that would come in. And so there was this groundswell of entrepreneurial hopefuls that wanted to get together and talk about what we could be doing. And through that is kind of where Starter Studio was born. And so Educate, the company that I founded, was lucky to be part of the first Starter Studio class. Cool. And it provided me a lot of confidence to be able to leave the corporate world where there's a tremendous amount of security, and I had a new baby in arms at that point in time, to join something that provided an infrastructure and a finite time period in order to set some goals, test your ideas, and meet people and build a product. A couple of years later, as we tried to continue to grow, Educate was the benefactor of another Orlando and Orange County initiative, which was the Firespring Fund. And the Firespring Fund is a growth stage accelerator. So Educate was in the first class of the Firespring Fund as well. And through the Firespring Fund and through the efforts of the networking, much like Sanera, we were able to say, hey, we need to raise money as well. And so we were able to raise $525,000 in capital outside of the Firespring Fund. So I think that there's a tremendous amount of resources that are here, and as an entrepreneur, it's certainly benefited our organization.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Sean, why don't you talk?
Yeah, so I absolutely agree with that. I'll start by saying that this community, the economic sort of platform that we have that has been, created, developed, fostered by, Mayor Jacobs, Mayor Dyer, allows for individuals like myself to start in a garage with this idea to be global. And every step of the way, we had to be helped and assisted, and we just needed the support of the community. And so today, we're global. We have offices around the world. We're a $15 million social enterprise. That only happened because Central Florida allowed that to happen. One of the great resources for us were the chambers. The Orlando Chamber of Commerce, now the Orlando Economic Partnership, 5-star. There's a number of leadership classes and courses and connects. And when you come in and you get involved, they help connect you. The Hispanic Chamber of Commerce has been a huge resource for us. The African American Chamber of Commerce has been a huge resource. Collaborated. If you are looking to develop and to advance your organization, those chambers are great places, which are really just bringing together like-minded individuals, which is this community, who want to help others succeed. And it's that climate and that environment that we have successfully built that I believe has led to this incredible economic boom that we're having. Everyone wanting to be here, and it's leading to these success stories. So it's a good place to want to and to need to develop. And chambers were very, very helpful for us.
Good. Well, I think we had a nice overview of a number of different programs and organizations, and clearly it takes a village. All your companies are different. They had different needs at different times. And so recently, Scenario, you were able to raise more money. So we're all proud that started here in Central Florida. But tell us, you raised money in Atlanta. You're going to do some expanding in Atlanta. Tell us what that means for Orlando.
Orlando's home is where I'm going to start with. And one of the things that even when we were out, this round for the reason why we raised capital outside of Orlando this time is we definitely have maximized our resources here that have gotten us to the point where we are today. And there's still a long ways to go. But we wanted to ensure that we had national expansion and to create the footprint outside of Orlando so that the other cities can kind of take a look at, oh, hey, there are amazing technology companies that stem from Orlando. And so Atlanta is home to, it's called FinTech Alley or Payments Alley. So about 70% of the transactions that run through the entire networks of the United States, 70% of them run through a company out of Atlanta. And so Fat Merchant always has had an exit in mind. And so for us, it was a very strategic move for us to be placed in the heart of payment capital, so that we can ensure that we're making the right strategic connections with partners, vendors, et cetera. And so the venture capital fund that funded us is Fulcrum Equity Partners, and they actually have a good presence in Florida as well. But it's the largest fund in the Southeast. They manage over $1 billion in assets. Fat Merchant was the first Orlando investment, the first female investment, the first payments investment that they had made. And so I'm really excited to kind of champion our name out, nationally, not just in Orlando. They did, I will say, part of the due diligence back and forth was that we would move headquarters from Orlando to Atlanta. And that was a no deal for Fat Merchant and for us. And so headquarters is still here. We actually just expanded further. We just expanded our offices in downtown Orlando. We actually just added another 24 jobs to our team, where our team has surpassed 50-plus employees now, and we're on track we'll probably be at close to 75 by the end of next year. And so there will be some job expansion outside of Orlando, but headquarters is here, and all functions of our organization are here, so that is very loud and clear.
And you're here.
And I'm here, yes. I live here. I have an 18-month-old daughter, and my husband is also an entrepreneur, so we're not going anywhere.
Exactly. That's a fantastic story.
I just travel to Atlanta every week. Tuesday through Thursday. Luckily, it's only an hour flight.
In Gainesville, we said to get to heaven, you got to go through Atlanta. So a lot of us understand. So, Courtney, I'm interested to hear your story. So, interested in the Collegiate Pathway program, Tech Sassy Girls.
Okay. So I believe in giving back, and we're passionate about technology. So there are a few organizations, nonprofit organizations, that we support, but the Tech Sassy Girls organization is a one that's near and dear to my heart. The program provides programming for middle and high school girls, and we provide educate them in the fields of STEM. We include college tours where we take the girls to visit different colleges and universities, visiting the sciences and engineering departments. Mm-hmm. We also do what we call local tech treks, where we ask and visit local companies and have the girls meet with professionals in their fields, get to talk to the engineers that are in their fields that look like them, and also get to shadow. And we also have hands-on experiences for them where we provide after-school coding workshops as well as hackathons. Mm-hmm. And last summer and the summer before, my firm actually hired some of these students to serve as interns. Wow. So we gave them opportunities to work on real projects, coding, and I support this organization by being a board member. Uh-huh. We support them financially. By being a sponsor. And we also have members of our staff that actually teach some of the coding workshops for the girls. So we're seeing the results. Some of the graduates that are going off to college are actually studying in STEM majors.
Right.
So we feel we're making a little dent there, and we're happy to keep supporting the organization.
That's fantastic. I'm glad we're getting into some of these stories about kind of beyond the business, how an entrepreneur can not only have success, but then have a broader impact on what comes next. Chris, why don't you talk a little bit about, we see this in your messaging and your company's ethos as well. Tell us a little bit about how you're impacting others.
Yeah, I think it stems from this concept of just being a lifelong learner and being able to provide resources to individuals so that they can continue on their journey of learning. And it's one of the things that we're so proud of being part of the Orange County community is the resources that we're talking about today really facilitate anyone who wants to continue on their learning journey, who wants to continue to improve their ability to be productive in society, whether it's for something personal or for their current job. So by participating in things like the Orlando Tech Association, by participating with the Orlando Ruby users groups or the different organizations, I think it really comes back to Educate as a core, as an organization that wants to lift up the employees and the community and provide them education so that they could have the ability to prosper and to live healthier lives. So it's definitely a core value of my own, and it's definitely, I think, a core value of our organization, and I'm happy to live in a city and a county that is providing that back to the community as well.
Fantastic. Now, so Sean, I mean, we're seeing a theme here of the impact we're having on the community, and recently a program was launched in partnership and through Rollins College, the Social Enterprise Accelerator, and we have some people here that have participated. So tell us a little bit about how you've been involved and how we have this theme that's emerged in recent years, a social enterprise idea and concept, and how we're fostering that in Orange County.
Yeah, it's very important economically as well. I'm going to tie this together. So number one, we launched with an amazing group of people, Rob Pinapinto, Mark Brewer, Wayman Armstrong, who's here, Rally. We have this vision to make Central Florida the global leader in social enterprise and social entrepreneurship. Okay, what is social enterprise, social entrepreneurship? It's the combining of business and business technique and business acumen with doing good, helping others, and trying to drive good in our society. Okay, now why do we want to do that? Well, just to step back a little bit, sort of the facts. Baby boomers are the most philanthropic generation in the history of the world, have outgiven all other generations prior combined. Baby boomers care. Millennials, there you go. Baby boomers, give yourselves one. Millennials are the most socially conscious generation in the history of the world. Actually, they're not. Gen Z, right behind them, is the most socially conscious generation now in the history of the world. And it's a much larger generation than the millennials and than the baby boomers. So we live in a day and time where we value helping others. We see a lot of issues. We see a lot of problems in our world. That's probably because of technology and the smartphone and the ability to right in our face at any day and time see all the bad stuff that's happening. We know that, even though we have tremendous government here in Central Florida, we know that government can't solve all of our problems. We know that there's not enough money in philanthropy to solve our problems. There's awesome nonprofits that are doing incredible things. They're at the tip of the spear and been fighting the fight, but there's just not enough money there. So corporations value helping others. Literally it's a part of the economy now. And so how you as a business address that with your employees, how you address it with your consumers, how you address it with your shareholders. I had dinner this week with the president of one of our big partners, Guest Supply. They're the billion-dollar arm of Cisco. And we're talking about board meetings and meetings that they were having. I was at a town hall this week as well with them. And they said, what are we doing all these tax breaks? What's happening? Are employees going to get bonuses? They said, we're reinvesting these tax breaks, and we're looking at ways for us with our employees to engage them more in the community, to help them be able to be a beneficiary of the community. If you look at every Cone survey and every study that comes out, it says that if you do that and you provide that to your employees, they end up liking the company more. They end up being more efficient. They end up being more productive because they feel good. They make that emotional connection that the organization I work for or the product that I'm buying or the supply chain that we've developed cares about the environment, cares about social justice, cares about social cause. And so it's very important. So Rally, the Social Enterprise Accelerator, is about inviting all these great ideas that are out there globally. And there's so many of them here in Central Florida. It's about inviting these organizations here to Central Florida. It's about developing these organizations, incubating and accelerating these organizations, putting awesome mentors around them, which are all business individuals. That's who all the mentors that are participating in this are the business leaders of our community. Ben Hoyer also, and if you'll to mention him, did an incredible job with Credo and now into Rally. Putting those mentors around and helping develop these businesses. These, by the way, are for-profit companies. Many of them. There's a nonprofit segment to it, but the idea is to make investable opportunities, to drive return for those that want to invest. We understand that when you talk about social impact, those returns may not be at the heavy sort of tech end, but they will drive financial return while also driving impact and cause and environmental impact, sustainability, those other metrics that, again, we now really value as a society. So it's really exciting. We've had our first cohort we just got amazing organizations that are in. Many of them are driving revenue. They are driving really good revenue and looking to accelerate themselves. And so, again, we're gonna make Central Florida the global leader in social enterprise and social entrepreneurship. Rollins College as well has been a huge partner in that effort, as has Valencia and as has UCF.
That's fantastic. Thanks for giving everyone an understanding of what that program's all about. So we'll take our first question off of Twitter. So it's actually a board member of the partnership, Mark Hohenstein, and I'm sure he used the hashtag button and he didn't use pound. So we all have great ideas, but most never put those ideas into action. What's the biggest barrier in people's minds to starting an innovative company like yours? And then how do you overcome them? So who wants to take that one?
Well, I'd talk about it. So for me, it was making sure that the problem that you're solving is your problem to solve. And I think once you're comfortable with that idea, that you're the expert, that you have the idea about the merchant services and how you can solve it using a unique way, or you can build technology in a unique way, or you can solve a passion that you have about cleanliness, or for me it was how do you the uniqueness of our city and the resources that we're talking about today. I think you can overcome those barriers. The barriers of fear, the barriers of finances, the barriers of anything that makes you uncomfortable. And usually you hear this, if you're doing something uncomfortable, it's probably a good thing to be doing because something good's going to come out of it. And so I think continue going after that if it's your problem to solve. If it's not your problem to solve, let somebody else solve that problem. Go find another problem that you can solve.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
I would just add in this community, socialize it. There's great individuals here who want to help. We've had some great advisors who we met from the chambers, guys like Rob Pinapinto, Dr. Paul Skomsky, guys who we thought about various ideas and innovations, and we went and socialized it with them and got honest, great feedback about whether that was a good idea to pursue or not. There's also that leap off, by the way, just thing that's got to happen. I mean, I was at Channel Intelligence technology company that Google bought a few years ago. Actually, Donna McKenzie from Firespring Fund was my CFO. I was VP of sales, so my job was to drive her nuts. And all of a sudden, I go from being a technology guy to sitting in a garage scraping soap, thinking that I can save the world. So sometimes you've got to take that leap, find good advisors. I get approached a lot about that, and happy to serve in this community to pay back what has been given to me within this community. And all of these great business leaders in the room have that responsibility as well. I implore you to do that. Help others, advise them, give them guidance, give them support, so we can continue this great momentum that our city has and that our region has to continue this positive progress.
And the only thing that I'll add to that, and you guys are so spot on, is it is that leap that you do have to take, but you don't have to go all in right away. So a lot of times I see entrepreneurs who, they have a really great idea, but like Sean said, you need to go get it flushed out. You need to ensure that, somebody calls your baby ugly, that's okay. And you need to talk about it. I hear entrepreneurs all the time, like, I have a great idea, but I don't want anybody to steal it. no one's going to steal your idea because it's not their problem to solve. Exactly. So get out there, start talking about the idea. When I launched Fat Merchant, I was literally pitching at anybody who would give me a mic, I was talking about Fat Merchant, from the chamber to 1 million cups to every pitch competition. We ended up taking home over $200,000 in prize money dollars on venture competitions, and that's how I bootstrapped the business and got validation and feedback along the way. So you have to get out there, and you don't have to quit your job right away. Once you validate that there is a market problem to solve and that you're going to get a customer to pay for it, or you're going to get organizations to stand behind it in whatever capacity, then you go out and you take that leap, and you have to just go for it.
So I'm going to stay with you because we have a great question. So you're representing the women here.
Yes.
You're an incredible inspiration. So let's hear some recommendations that really apply to aspiring female entrepreneurs.
Don't let yourself be the challenge that's in front of you. I think as women, sometimes we're our biggest critics. We're perfectionists. Everything has to be just right. And we're afraid of taking risks because we're afraid of failure. We're afraid of letting other people down more than ourselves. And so what I would tell any woman and any young woman here that wants to launch a business, advance their career, go for it. Ask for that raise. Ask for that promotion because you deserve it. And a lot of the times we kind of have this little voice on the side of on our shoulder that just tells us that we can't, or we're not ready yet, or we have to kind of do this next piece before we actually do it. Just get rid of that completely. So that's my advice: is you have to go for it and believe in yourself because we can do it.
That's fantastic. It's another episode of Don't Let My Confidence Interrupt Your Expertise.
Yeah.
So let's look now at hurdles. So you've all had to raise money. You've all whether through sales or raising seed fund, or tell us what the hurdles are that you had to overcome to get to the point where you were fundable, where someone was willing to make an investment not only in your company but in you. What are some hurdles? Courtney, you grew up in Jamaica, right? Tell us a little about your background.
Sure. I grew up in Jamaica. I was there until the age of 14, and didn't really have any entrepreneurs in my family, so no mentors there to look to for advice. But when I came here, the land of opportunity, Jamaica was very tough. We grew up poor, so we had to learn the value of a dollar and learn how to make a dollar go a long way. So when we came to the U.S., I always knew that I wanted to own a business. Just been in me for a long time, but I didn't know how. And I took some classes, found great resources like the National Entrepreneurship Center and the UCF Business Incubator. But if you noticed when I did my intro, a lot of the clients that we do business with are large government agencies, like Orange County government, like GOA. So it was very challenging for us to win business when I started, especially without that mentorship, because there was something important that I had to learn a little bit later. In order to do business with a large government agency, you had to go through certain qualifiers. You had to have the capital, you had to have the resources, and you had to have done similar projects of similar size for X number of years for similar agencies. And I didn't have any of those, but I was bidding on projects against very large companies, and I just kept, I got good at losing bids. So eventually, through again just pounding my head against it, talking with my rep at the chambers, talking with some of the supply diversity folks, I learned about the concept of teaming, and that's where you would basically join in on a team with a larger firm, and use that firm's qualifications to put at the front, and then you would come in and provide critical services to augment that package. And that was a real eye-opener for us in winning business and getting capital to fund our company. And that's resulted for us in some of our large contracts that we have now. And that's the advice I would give to any small business in our role that's looking to do business with government agencies is to join a team, learn that concept, join a team, and bring something valuable to that team that they don't have.
I don't think we could ask for a better answer to that question. Let me ask the next question we have that came in on Twitter's, how do we compare to other markets when it comes to small business and entrepreneurial resources? Whether you've been in that market, or maybe you've seen a little bit of what's going on in Atlanta, or peers or others that you've met along the way that have shared things that have gone on in other markets.
Yeah, I'll answer it a little bit. We've done pitch competitions in other cities and traveled to other cities to kind of see what they were doing. And I would say for us here, I mean, what's interesting is just how large of a university that we have that's local, that provides an exceptional amount of bright talent of new entrepreneurs or new people who want to join up with an entrepreneur to start up an idea and do something and learn something new. The business community that we have that sponsors events within the tech community and within the entrepreneurial community. And then just the determination that we have, the uniqueness of the culture within Orlando, the diversity that we have is so unique. And so we're actually starting to see people moving from Silicon Valley to Orlando, from New York, Brooklyn area to Orlando, because the cost of living is so high there. The resources aren't nearly as great from the ground up, and they can come here and be in an early incubated city that is fostering these relationships and be a part of something where you can have an incredible life. I mean, I know we were talking about housing prices and they're increasing, but a technologist's salary tends to be above average, and they can live a fairly good life here in the Central Florida area.
I hope you recorded that. I mean, that's our next ad.
Yeah, I'll add, and I want to add real quick on the female entrepreneurs. We have rock star female entrepreneurs in Central Florida. Sanira's one, Carol Craig, Sherry Sandiford, Dr. Mimi Hall. There's just some amazing ones out there. So you need to. It's a female entrepreneur. Again, I go back to, find somebody that can help you. And there's just some rock stars in this community to get with. So we Clean the World. We have offices in Orlando, Las Vegas, Montreal, Hong Kong. We're opening in Shanghai right now. That has taken us a year, and we're still not there. I can compare those cities. Orlando is by far the easiest, the most inviting, the climate is set up so perfect for you to launch a business and to get going and to get access to some of that early, sort of banking capital, those sort of things. We struggled quite a bit just within our own figuring out our proper structure. Started off as a 501c3, and that was in 2009, by the way, with all the economic numbers were just a really bad time to try and start. And then inserted the for-profit, which became a B Corp, in order to really help us get access to better capital, banking, and then investment capital. So we learned along the way, and again, I get asked frequently for for entrepreneurial startups, can you help me? And I'm always willing to get on the phone and talk. And again, that's because of the climate that that was afforded me and afforded Clean the World here in this. But in comparison to those other cities, I love my friends and all of our great partners in Las Vegas. But the difference in trying to get started in Las Vegas as a business versus here in Orlando is just absolutely, it's night and day. Easier, better, faster. The community fosters that here in Central Florida. So it's a great place. That's why I think all these folks are moving and they're coming down. And we need to continue that. We need to continue to have an environment here of pro-business, pro-growth, pro-entrepreneurship, because that will continue to drive the economic growth that we're seeing right now.
No doubt. It's not, I mean, the jobs aren't going to come just by recruiting companies. That's not the full equation. It's a piece, but it's supporting this ecosystem so we get more organic growth, more companies, and then those companies are invested in the community, and they may raise a lot of money in Atlanta, but Orlando is still home to them. So I don't think we could have asked for a better opportunity to get a glimpse into what it takes to, what the village looks like to raise an entrepreneur. So I'm going to go, I know there's at least one thing that you would have wished I would have asked or wish we would have got on Twitter. So take a minute each and just hit one more important thing that you want everyone to know about what it's like to be an entrepreneur here in Orange County.
I think that if I'm a business leader and I'm sitting out there and I'm thinking to myself, do I sponsor these programs? Do I get my employees and invested in going out and participating in these things? Is entrepreneurship something I should be concerned about because maybe they'll leave and start their own businesses? I think the one thing to really think about is the fostering of this community, the supporting of this community really raises the bar across the board. By having these really great engineers move to Orlando, by having these really great, successful people come back and live in Orlando, and by taking the new students and bringing them into an environment where they can communicate with other business leaders and other engineers and other technologists, it really just raises the level of knowledge that all of us have. And so they take that back to your organization, and they improve your organization, and they bring those ideas, and the things that we're talking about, those ideas are amongst all of us. And so don't be concerned, don't be scared to sponsor, to participate, to let your employees go out and do these things, because it really raises the bar for all of us.
Yeah, good point. Tanira.
And to add to that, one of the things that I think that's really important that I think that we still have a challenge with is we need to bridge the gap with the business community and the entrepreneurial community. Both of these together is what's going to make Orlando continually successful. It's going to not only create the jobs, but build up our economy and put these students to work. But we need to support, we have so much great enterprise businesses in Central Florida. We need to give the small businesses a chance. We need to give the technology companies a chance, and we should be working with one another. So we should be working with the Educates of the world and the Fat Merchants of the world, and Clean the World, and Courtney's company. We should be working with each other to help support and continue to foster the growth within the community so that we can just accelerate it 10 times faster.
Thanks for the tee up. We feel the same way.
Okay.
That's what 2018 looks like for us. Courtney.
And mine would be, if I could get back to the Tech Sassy girls that I talked about, I think it's important to give back and to leave that legacy and to teach and to train and to bring up others behind us. Sean mentioned that there are some rock stars, female entrepreneurs here in Central Florida. I know because I have one at home. My wife is executive director of Tech Sassy Girls, and she's really passionate about that organization. So we have a great partnership going where we're taking these students, we're introducing them to STEM education. We're also teaching them life skills about how to carry themselves in the professional work environment, and also helping to instill the confidence so that they could go out and be makers, and not just consumers. And we're also combining that with the work we do in our company, where we're now not just supporting the organization, but we're putting them on real projects. So it's kind of a win-win situation for us. We get to give back to these students. They do good work for us, working on real projects for clients. And I think a model like that could scale, and we could expand that as far as, not only teaching, but teaching real-life practical skills that we can use to create more entrepreneurs.
So there's the new definition of the Orlando power couple.
Yeah, I'm gonna continue on that notion. So this is a room filled of brilliant business minds, brilliant entrepreneurs. Okay, pay it forward, and let's help our young generation. Let's help students at UCF. There's Young Entrepreneurs Academy. I think it's at the Orlando Science Center. It's what you're doing with those young ladies in the STEM programs. Let's teach them. So it's very easy. Serve, help. Figure out how you can take your business talent and just go guest lecture at UCF or Valencia, or find a Boys and Girls Club program. Get with Eddie Morton, see how you can help out in the LIFT program. Get involved in some way to help take your knowledge and with your expertise and deliver that forward. And lastly, I'll just say this, as you think about what you're going to do with your organizations with those lower tax rates, go back to something I said before. Figure out how to get your employees engaged in serving. Serve this community. Okay, get with Second Harvest Food Bank. Get with Feeding Children Everywhere. Get with these. There's so many of them. I can't name them. They're just amazing organizations here. Figure out a way to get your employees clean the world. Get your employees to go to these organizations and to help them and to serve them and to be involved, and watch what that does to your employee morale. Watch what that does to the spirit in your office and to the culture, and what it does to the energy inside of your office. And while you're doing that, you're positively impacting this community, and you're continuing to drive the momentum that we already have.
Fantastic. Please help me in thanking our panel.
Thank you. Cool. Thank you.
Well, folks, to me, that is inspiring, it's exhilarating, and it is encouraging for our community. Once you take stock of these 5 individuals already, they are success stories, but they're also superstars in the making in our community. They will be the business and civic leaders. They're going to be the mentors and advisors and encouragers for others as well. And as Sunira said so aptly, they're all homegrown successes for us here in Central Florida. We need to embrace that. We need to claim them. We need to encourage them. Will you please join me in thanking once again Tim and the Fantastic Four. Well, after you heard numbers and analysis from Mayor Jacobs and Sean Snaith, after you heard the tremendous insights of our 4 panelists and Tim Giuliani, if you're not excited and optimistic and jazzed up about the future here in Central Florida, well, you probably need to come over to our friends at Florida Hospital table here and have them check your pulse, because something's missing in you. But now, to put an appropriate bow on this morning's activities, it's my pleasure to bring back up Mayor Jacobs to the podium. Folks, we are so fortunate. When you look at those numbers and the recovery that we've had here in Central Florida in the last 7 to 8 years, it's not by accident. It takes leadership, unwavering and focused leadership. And we're so lucky to have a mayor that is multilingual. She speaks technology, she speaks tourism, she can speak small businesses, and she can speak multinational corporations as well. Please join me in welcoming our mayor, Teresa Jacobs.
Gracias. Y estoy tratando de aprender español. That means I'm trying to learn Spanish too. Fred, thank you so much. Wow. You've done a great job. Thank you. You do this for us every year. I tell you, anytime I call on Fred, he is always there. He brings such passion and energy. Thank you. And actually, when you think about it, if you ask UCF for anything, UCF always delivers, bringing incredible passion and energy. What an impressive gathering of speakers and panelists. This morning has been so informative for me and so valuable in helping us as a community explore the vital connection between job creation, workforce development, and our innovation-driven economy. I was especially intrigued to learn about how important the role is of entrepreneurship in our expanding economy, and how important it is that we maintain the entrepreneurs that we're cultivating right here. We've heard some tremendous stories of strategic thinking and creativity translating into marketable products, and frequently with an awesome social impact. It's so impressive to hear about these efforts from the leaders who brought their dreams to life, the leaders who recognized that need and knew that it was their challenge to solve. And of course, together with so many partners, we're working to make sure that all of our entrepreneurs and incubator businesses have the tools for success. And we heard about how important that was to these leaders right here. Dr. Snaith, thank you for sharing your fascinating research, your insights. I don't know what I would have done if I had had that presentation when my children were little, my 4 little ones. I don't know what my daughter might have done with that 3 boys, 1 girl, what she would have done with that urinal. I have flashbacks of, and I have stories to share. We don't have time to hear them. My kids would kill me for telling them. But my potty training stories, I can only imagine if that thing had been on the wall. So thank you for that. I also, unfortunately, I asked him to tell the story again about the Sky Mall because before he told the first story, I had already invested in one of those, made the same mistake. That thing is still at my house. I've tried to sell it on eBay. I can't give it away. So garage sales, you name it, nobody will take the thing off my hands. So Dr. Snaith continues to be the gold standard. And, or maybe we should now say the black and gold standard. Yeah, go Knights. I feel kind of like our community is kind of like the Knights, don't you? That we really are number one. It's just most people don't quite know it yet. Okay? But we'll get there. To bring this summit to a close, I want to remind everyone that with our strong economy and an unparalleled quality of life, the opportunities are going to continue to come our way, and they're going to come our way fast. And that means that every one of us has to be prepared. I know Tim is. He is at the batter's cage. He is ready to go, and opportunities are going to be here. And it's incredible that we have such a strong community ready at each opportunity, from high-quality incubators to strategic entrepreneurs and small business support. The strong commitment of our business community and our research partners is more important than ever. And the same goes for our education partners. We would not be where we are today if it weren't for that talent pool. And that starts everywhere from K through 12, which people don't think about. Our average citizen still doesn't realize how incredibly far our public education system in Orange County has come in the last 10 years. It's nothing short of amazing. And then you look at Valencia College, UCF, Seminole State. We are a powerhouse here, turning out the best and the brightest. The goal for us, making sure we keep them. And so I always find myself asking people, if they're leaving, I want to know why. If they're here and they're successful, I want to know, what does it take to keep them? And that was going to be my question. I had a little bad experience with Twitter recently. I thought I was getting the hang of it, maybe feeling a little inspired by the president. I haven't felt very inspired by the president, to be quite frank. But on that one issue, I started tweeting, and then I tweeted something. And apparently, that pound hashtag thing, I misused it I wanted to send a message, but I sent it to the wrong audience. I found out about it on Monday. I came in, and my staff said, you might want to just kind of slow down and ask a little advice before you start sending out those hashtags, because you went into the enemy's tent there and spit in their face. So with that, I'm not doing as much of that tweeting as I did for a brief weekend, but it didn't take long. I mean, I was in over my head in like 2 tweets. But still, I wanted to ask the question, and I didn't have to, because Sanara, you answered the question. That was, what does it take to keep you here? Because it's so cool that we've invested in these programs to help entrepreneurs. And you guys, you just hit it out of the ballpark explaining how important that is. But how do we keep you? And you told me what I've always innately believed. We spend a lot of time, especially in government, we spend a lot of time thinking about infrastructure. Mayor Dyer and I have been very, very focused on how do we build a place that people want to live in. How do we know what the next generation and the generation after that, how do we know where they want to live? What do they want for transportation? How do we need to get that infrastructure right, the tangible part? But deep down, I've always suspected that most people, I always call myself terribly typical Teresa. I'm pretty typical. What matters most to me, it's not the brick and the mortar. It's the heart and the soul. It's that culture of a community. And I don't mean fancy places to go, and I don't even mean the Performing Arts Center, as wonderful as it is. But it's what that culture represents, how we treat each other, how we care for each other, who we are, what we care about, what we invest our time in. And that's what I heard from each one of you. Sanara, I was like ready to get up and just scream when you said, this is home, and I didn't leave for Atlanta. That's the part. I talk all the time about creating the best place in the world to live, work, and raise a family. And I tell you what, family means something different to so many people. We have different shapes and sizes and types of family, but we all know what that means. It means the people that we go to in our tough times, the people that we run to celebrate our great times. It's that network, and whether that's the people that you're married to, or the children that you raised, or your friends at work, or your neighbors, whoever that family is to you, to create that sense of a culture and a community that we are here for each other. And we've seen that in the last couple of years like I have never seen that in my life, any place I've lived. I grew up in Miami. I spent years in West Palm Beach, North Palm Beach. I spent 10 years in Atlanta. I came here, and I came home for the first time in my life. And what I have seen in the last 10 years in terms of a welcoming place where it doesn't matter whether you moved here 6 months ago or 6 years ago or you were born here, we're all kind of equal in that we have ideas. And when we bring those ideas to the table and they have to do with making a better community, everybody embraces them. That's a culture that I think is infectious, and I think that is the key to our future. And I was so glad to hear you guys say it. These guys, Tim, man, take them everywhere, is what I'm telling you. You want to talk about promoting what this community is about? These 4 individuals said it all. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your success. Thank you for your passion. But mostly today, thanks for sharing it with all of us and inspiring each and every one of us. So with that, I am going to sum this up by thanking all of our sponsors, but most importantly, thanking each and every one of you, because it takes all of us to continue to make this the great community. I know that your heart is in this community. I know you care about our future as much as I do. And it is with that I have enormous confidence in the future of Orange County, Orlando, Central Florida, and each and every one of you. God bless and thank you.